to pass that health care bill, as the much anticipated Congressional Budget Office could release their score as early as today. And an optimistic President Trump telling our Pete Hegseth in an interview yesterday that he thinks they're going to get there.
I don't think they're that far off, famous last words, right? But I think we're going to get there. Can't promise. I think we're going to get there.
But this is the question. How far off are they? Republicans can lose no more than 2 votes to pass the bill, and there are currently 5 who have said they cannot support it, with even more saying that they are waiting to decide. Louisiana's Bill Cassidy saying if changes aren't made, he's not on board.
Right now, I am undecided. There are things in this bill which adversely affect my state that are peculiar to my state. A couple of the things I'm concerned about. But if those can be addressed, I will. And if they can't be addressed, I won't.
Some other Republicans, like Susan Collins of Maine, says she's waiting for the CBO score before making her decision. And no Democrats are supporting the bill, as Minority Leader Chuck Schumer puts the odds at 50-50 the Republicans can pull it off.
I think it's 50-50. First, Democrats, we are doing everything we can to fight this bill because it's so devastating for the middle class. I think they have, at best, a 50-50 chance of passing this bill.
There's also a growing chorus from some GOP members to delay the vote this week, but expect a lot of bargaining and late nights to try and get there first. Rob, Heather?
And it will be interesting to see if they don't, do they stay through August?
Yeah, we will have to see about that, won't we? All right, thank you so much. It'd be very interesting to see if they cancel their vacation. All right, one of the Democrats' main issues with the Senate health care bill is its impact on Medicaid. Josh Holmes, founder of the Washington, D.C.-based management firm Calvary, says the left is fixated on creating a welfare state.
If you look at the way that healthcare has developed over the last 50 years in this country, it has taken a significant lurch to the left. And the reason it has is exactly what you just outlined, is that Democrats have an incremental way of getting to their ultimate goal, which is socialized, nationalized, single-payer system. So you create an entitlement program for the elderly, an entitlement program for the young, an entitlement program for the poor, and then ever expand eligibility for all 3. And that's what we've got here today. This is a delicate balance. It is an extremely delicate balance to get the right and the left of the party on the same page with no margin of error. But I think that this bill is there. And the alternative, just so we're clear, the alternative to 51 votes is Obamacare.
In other news, today marks the last day before the Supreme Court's summer recess, and major rulings could come down at any time. This as there's some speculation that's growing that a justice could be stepping down. Patty Ann Brown joins us now live with those details. Good morning, Patty.
Well, good morning, Heather. The Supreme Court is gearing up for its last public session today. But before the justices' long summer break, they have some key decisions to announce. We could hear as soon as today what action the court will take on the President Trump's travel ban. The executive order restricts travel from 6 predominantly Muslim nations. The Justice Department is asking the Supreme Court for permission to enforce the second version of the president's pause while they appeal rulings against it from lower courts. If the High Court decides to take the case, oral arguments could start as early as October. The justices are also expected to weigh in on another closely watched case concerning the separation of church and state. The court trying to decide whether it's legal for the Missouri Department of Natural Resources to exclude a church from a state program that reimburses the cost of rubberizing the surface of a playground. And there's a major rumor swirling around that could overshadow all of that. 80-year-old Justice Anthony Kennedy could announce his retirement today. If he does, President Trump will make his second nomination for a Supreme Court appointment.
We're paying very close attention to these last bit of decisions, as the president did with Justice Neil Gorsuch. Whenever there are vacancies, whenever that happens, he will look for somebody who has fidelity to the Constitution, somebody who has the judicial temperament and a record that's beyond reproach.
So all in all this week, there are 6 opinions that have not yet been released. 3 of them were argued before the newest justice, Neil Gorsuch, took the bench. Heather?
All right, Patty Ann, very nice to have you with us this morning. Thank you. Also going on today, President Trump and the Prime Minister of India will meet face-to-face at the White House. The Trump administration hoping to boost relations with Narendra Modi, speaking about the terrorism trade and North Korea in one-on-one talks. And they will then sit down for a meal, marking the first time that President Trump has hosted a foreign dignitary for a White House dinner. Rob?
All right, well, this is the terrifying moment that a plane packed with passengers starts to shake like a washing machine at 30,000 feet in the sky. This is unbelievable. Seats and tray tables vibrating uncontrollably on an Air Asia flight for nearly 2 hours. That flight from Australia to Malaysia forced a turnaround with more than 360 people on board. The pilot asking passengers to pray. I would freak out. Before that flight actually landed safely, Air Asia blaming it on a technical failure with the engine. Somehow, nothing went wrong. Everybody gets on the ground safely. All right, an off-duty officer jumping into action when a passenger tries to open an emergency exit thousands of feet in the sky. Pamela Minshew tackling the woman on a Southwest Airlines flight from L.A. to Houston. Moments later, the pilot making an emergency landing in Corpus Christi, Texas. Passengers say the woman was screaming and acting very strange before the plane even took off. The FBI is now looking into this.
Good grief.
Yeah.
Well, from by air to by sea, dozens are feared dead after a party boat that was packed with people suddenly sinks. Now, the 4-story ship, you can see it there, it plunged underwater in just a matter of minutes. This happened in Colombia. Rescuers racing to the scene, pulling 100 people from the water. 9 people are confirmed dead, and then there's another 28 that are still missing. It's unclear what caused the boat to sink. Survivors say that it appeared to be overloaded. And the British insurance industry warned the government, apparently, about flammable cladding just 1 month before that deadly London high-rise fire. 79 people were killed when a faulty refrigerator burst into flames. Quickly, you can see the flames, they spread floor to floor. At least 60 apartment buildings across the UK have failed safety tests since the deadly inferno earlier this month.
All right, the gondola ride where a teenager plunged 25 feet to the ground remains closed today.
They'll catch you, honey. Go ahead.
Unbelievable story. The girl falling into the arms of bystanders inside Six Flags Great Escape. That's in upstate New York. She was not seriously hurt. It's still unclear how exactly she fell. The park now conducting an internal review saying there doesn't appear to be any mechanical issues with that ride.
Well, an inmate on the run for more than 3 decades is back behind bars. 3 decades. They finally found him. 60-year-old Stephen Dishman, arrested in Arkansas after escaping prison back in 1985. He was serving a 7-year sentence for burglary and theft. It's unclear how he escaped or how police eventually tracked him down. Dishman will now serve the remainder of his sentence and possibly more time for his jailbreak.
All right, desperate to save their home, terrified people using pool water to battle a wildfire in Southern California. The intense flames all started by a fiery car crash on a freeway. The flames fed by very dry brush out there. It's very hot. Also, it's very windy. And that fire quickly got up to 900 acres. It is now 50% surrounded.
Well, SpaceX nailing a pair of rapid-fire weekend launches.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah, nice weekend for Elon Musk. A Falcon 9 rocket sending Bulgaria's first communication satellite into orbit Friday from Florida. The launch clearing the way for another mission in California on Sunday. That rocket successfully delivering 10 satellites into orbit for the communications company Iridium. The back-to-back launches are the closest together so far for SpaceX. Doing well.
Smooth sailing for them, and of course they need clear skies for that to happen.
Easy to get that in California, not so much in Florida these days. But Janice is here to talk about some weather for us.
Do I get some credit for the weekend here in the Northeast?
Yes.
How
You did a
about
great
that?
job.
It's always thanks to you.
I will take full credit for the bad, the good and the bad. All right, let's take a look at the current temperature. 65 in New York, cooler across the Great Lakes Northeast, still very warm across the Southwest. But the good news is the heat is going to break across the West this week. Looking at the past 6 hours, we have showers and thunderstorms moving across the South, Texas, as well as New Mexico. Mexico. And then that front that brought the showers and thunderstorms this weekend that has cleared out, that has moved offshore, which is great news. Future radar is going to show unsettled weather across the Gulf Coast. And then our next system moves across the northern plains, upper Midwest, and that's where we will see the next threat for severe storms Tuesday and Wednesday. For now, looks like the heaviest rain will be in parts of Texas and New Mexico. Back to you, Heather and Rob.
Not too bad.
Happy Monday.
Yes.
Yeah, this was a great weekend. We want one more coming up for the 4th of July.
I'll see what I can do.
All right. Thanks so much, Janice.
You got it.
Thanks, Janice.
All right, Tim Tebow making his mark on the baseball field. The New York Mets now promoting Tebow to the team's high Class A affiliate in St. Lucie, Florida.
Tebow entered his final game with the Columbia Fireflies with 3 home runs, 23 RBIs. He should receive a warm welcome down south, where, of course, he led the University of Florida to 2 national football championships.
Well, your kid's got talent.
See if we have the same success with baseball. We'll see.
All right, the time now, 11 minutes after the hour. Hack attack. Pro-ISIS propaganda front and center on U.S. government websites. The cryptic message directed at President Trump.
And remember the university professor who sparked outrage by saying that the college student who died after being held prisoner in North Korea got what he deserved. That's a quote. The punishment that she is now facing.
And caught spreading fake news one too many times. The crackdown on Russia coverage now going on at CNN. Stay tuned for that.
Welcome back to Fox and Friends First. President Trump doubling down, blasting the investigation into Russian election interference, saying that the conspiracy actually happened on the Democratic side, tweeting Hillary Clinton colluded with the Democratic Party in order to beat crazy Bernie Sanders. Is she allowed to so collude? Unfair to Bernie. President Trump referring to the emails released by WikiLeaks, of course, suggesting that DNC staffers were trying to knock Sanders out of the race. And CNN imposing some strict new rules for its Russia coverage. BuzzFeed News obtaining an email from CNN Money executive editor Rich Barbieri saying, quote, no one should publish any content involving Russia without coming to me and Jason Farkas. The restrictions come after CNN had to retract a story connecting Anthony Scaramucci, a prominent ally of President Trump, to a Russian investment fund managed by a Kremlin-controlled bank. Rob?
All right, the Senate Judiciary Committee launching an investigation into whether former Attorney General Loretta Lynch interfered with the Hillary Clinton email probe. The news unsettling to the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee.
It does give me a queasy feeling as well. There may be a perfectly accurate explanation by Loretta Lynch about why she thought matter was the appropriate term rather than investigation, so I wouldn't assume James Comey's characterization is the last word on it, even though I'm sure it's accurate. But I'd like to hear what Loretta Lynch's explanation for that is.
Asking Comey to ease the tone of that to matter instead of saying investigation. Schiff also dismissing the idea of the House Intelligence Committee asking Lynch to testify, saying he doesn't know if it's really part of the Russia investigation. All right, while the investigation into Lynch is considered unprecedented, I should say, the network news outlets seem to be far more concerned about President Trump possibly having ties to Russia. Here is the coverage over the past 3 days on the Loretta Lynch probe. ABC devoting 31 seconds to this, while NBC and CBS both did nothing. But over those same 3 days, all 3 networks spent more than 10 minutes on the Russia probe, CBS hitting almost 20 minutes, as you see there. A new poll showing that a majority of voters have had enough of the Russia investigation. 64% say it's hurting the country. 56% say it's time for Congress and the media to move on to more important issues.
What do you think? Is this news, the New York Times using a full-page printout to actually express every lie that President Trump has told since taking office? Despite what the left says, though, the president continues to get things done, signing 40 pieces of legislation, 15 of them repeals of Obama-era regulations.
All right, Sean Spicer patting President Donald Trump on the back. The White House press secretary says he supports the president's decision to reveal the possibility of tapes with former FBI Director James Comey.
He knew that the truth would come out, and I think he's glad that the truth is coming out, that he had said very clearly that on 3 occasions he was told that he wasn't under investigation, there was no obstruction, and he was right. And I think that having Director Comey come out and admit it under oath and testimony proves that the president was right. I think it's clear.
All right, Spicer's comments there come after the commander-in-chief tweeted that there were no tapes last week, and a media firestorm started with that.
Well, Trump supporters in full force at a North Carolina Starbucks.
Yeah, the group coming together to hold a sit-in at the Starbucks after this happened to a woman when she visited that coffee house wearing a President Trump T-shirt.
They shouted out, "Build a wall," and kind of shoved my drink at me. And then all of the baristas in the back started cracking up laughing.
And Starbucks, by the way, has since apologized for that incident. And the time now is 20 minutes after the top of the hour. We keep moving along. Well, remove your shoes and your books. The new TSA crackdown that has the ACLU sounding off.
I made a promise to God that if he brought me home safely to my family, that I would do something in remembrance of those that have died.
Well, a veteran outraged after he was asked to stop playing taps outside of his own home. What his neighbors are now doing to try and make this right. All right, next time you fly, TSA may force you to remove books from your carry-on in the security line. A new safety procedure reportedly being tested, raising privacy concerns by the ACLU. TSA says it helps the screening process since passengers are stuffing bags to avoid luggage fees, but the books are so dense that they kind of block the x-rays, so you can't quite see through. Some airports are requiring all paper products to be removed, including even Post-it notes. We'll see how that goes.
Interesting. Well, in just hours, the former pharmaceutical exec once called the most hated man in America heads to a New York federal courtroom on fraud charges. Martin Shkreli sparked nationwide outrage back in 2015 for increasing the price of a drug that treats HIV patients nearly 5,000%. He is accused of running a Ponzi scheme, cheating investors out of $11 million. Shkreli faces up to 20 years in prison if convicted.
A very popular guy. All right, a Fox Business alert. It could be the beginning of the end for Takata. The company now filing for bankruptcy after 16 people were killed by their faulty airbags.
Tracy Carrasco from our sister network, Fox Business, is here now with what we need to know. Good morning, Tracy.
Good morning. Now, Japanese company Takata, who was at the center of one of the worst auto safety recalls, as you said, has filed for bankruptcy. You'll remember tens of millions of vehicles, we're talking Hondas, Toyotas, BMWs, were recalled for faulty airbag inflators. Takata faced tens of billions of dollars in costs and liabilities resulting from almost a decade of recalls. The company filed for bankruptcy protection in the United States and Japan, and said it would be bought for $1.6 billion by U.S.-based Key Safety Systems.
And it's White House Energy Week, is that right?
That's correct. Last week was Tech Week, and this week it's Energy Week at the White House. This is the latest of the administration's themed messaging weeks. The president will focus on the country becoming a net exporter of oil, gas, coal, and other energy resources. He is set to deliver a speech at the Energy Department on Thursday, focused almost entirely on energy exports.
Not a bad idea. Themed weeks. But Facebook trying to maybe get away from politics a little bit and willing to spend millions with Hollywood.
That's right. You know, compared with Netflix, Amazon, and Hulu, which have been producing original programming for years, Facebook is kind of late to the game. But insiders say the social networking giant is now talking to Hollywood studios and agencies about producing its own scripted TV quality original programming. Facebook is targeting audiences from 13 to 34 years old. It has already lined up a show called Strangers, a relationship drama, and a game show called Last State Standing. This could launch by the end of summer. Coming to a screen near you.
Yeah.
People will just be on Facebook 24 hours a day.
Exactly.
All right, Tracy, thanks so much.
Thanks, Tracy. Well, the time now is 25 minutes after the top of the hour. And first daughter Ivanka Trump going one-on-one with our own Ainsley Earhart.
I wanted to ask you, what does it mean to be an American? Why are you a proud American?
Oh, well, I am proud on so many levels.
Her answer coming up.
And so much for Love Wins. Outrage boiling over after UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and her son are harassed during a gay pride parade. Stay tuned for that. Beautiful Monday morning here in New York City. Good morning to you. You're watching Fox and Friends. First, I'm Rob Schmidt.
And I'm Heather Childers. Thank you so much for sticking around with us or just joining us. It is half past the top of the hour, and it's time to get straight to our top story for you. All eyes on the Senate as Republicans take one step closer, maybe, to repealing and replacing Obamacare.
That's right. President Trump optimistic about the overhaul despite both parties insisting that the vote be delayed. Griff Jenkins live in D.C. this morning with details on the health care showdown. Hey, Griff.
Hey, Rob and Heather. To borrow a line from the classic film Smokey and the Bandit, they got a long way to go in a short time to get there. Senate Republicans trying to pass the GOP health care bill by Friday, and the Congressional Budget Office score expected possibly as soon as today. But there are serious defections within the party. Republicans can lose no more than 2 votes to pass the bill, and there are currently 5 who have said they cannot support it. Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, Ron Johnson, and Dean Heller. Others are waiting to decide. Louisiana's Bill Cassidy saying if changes aren't made, he's not on board.
Right now, I am undecided. There are things in this bill which adversely affect my state that are peculiar to my state. A couple of the things I'm concerned about. But if those can be addressed, I will. And if they can't be addressed, I won't.
And some Republicans, like Susan Collins of Maine, says she's waiting for that CBO score. But an optimistic President Trump telling our Pete Hegseth that he thinks they're going to get there.
I don't think they're that far off, famous last words, right? But I think we're going to get there. Can't promise. I think we're going to get there.
No Democrats are supporting the bill as Minority Leader Chuck Schumer puts the odds at 50-50 the Republicans can pull this off.
I think it's 50-50. First, Democrats, we are doing everything we can to fight this bill because it's so devastating for the middle class. I think they have, at best, a 50-50 chance of passing this bill.
So an uphill challenge here with a growing chorus of some GOP members saying that they want to delay this vote this week. We'll see what's coming, Rob and Heather. Certainly a lot of long days and long nights.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice to see him working, though, over there in Washington. All right, Griff, thanks so much.
Thanks, Griff. Well, that brings us to a look at who is talking. And this morning, Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price says that the goal of the Trump administration is to create health care reform based on the needs of Americans, not the political interest of Washington insiders.
What we're trying to do here, admittedly, is to thread a needle and make it so that, as the president says, every single American needs to be able to have access to the kind of coverage that they want. Ensuring that pre-existing illnesses are covered, ensuring that there are no lifetime caps, ensuring that individuals, again, have the kind of choices that are necessary so that the system is responsive to people, to patients, not responsive to government. So it's significant reform. It's a move in a much better direction because it is a patient-centered move where patients and families and doctors will be making decisions, not Washington, D.C.
A lot of work to do. And now there's this. First daughter Ivanka Trump sitting down with our very own Ainsley Earhart for an exclusive one-on-one interview. The White House advisor revealing exactly what she's proud of in America.
I wanted to ask you, what does it mean to be an American? Why are you a proud American?
Oh, well, I am proud on so many levels. The opportunity of achieving the American dream and fulfilling one's potential. And there's no country in the world where there's more opportunity to do that than right here in America.
Watch the First Daughter's exclusive 3-part interview in just a few minutes on Fox and Friends.
All right, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations getting booed at a New York restaurant during the Gay Pride Parade. Nikki Haley posted about the disrespectful encounter on Twitter. Quote, "We, including my son, were booed by patrons saying hateful things as we left lunch during the Gay Pride Parade. Our country is better than this. Hashtag hate never wins." It is unclear right now where exactly they were eating.
Well, a university professor who says Otto Warmbier, quote, got what he deserved, has been fired. Catherine Detweiler is now stripped of her adjunct position at the University of Delaware following a series of hateful comments towards Warmbier on Facebook. The 22-year-old, of course, died last week after returning to the U.S. in an unresponsive state after more than a year in a North Korean prison. I think she got what she deserved.
I would say so.
Yeah.
All right, outrage after a veteran is ordered to stop playing taps outside of his own Pennsylvania home. The Glen Rock City Council says Joshua Corney can only play on Sundays and holidays to avoid the nuisance ordinance violation.
I made a promise to God that if he brought me home safely to my family, that I would do something in remembrance of those that have died specifically, but also to those that are continuing to serve.
All right, it's an interesting topic here. It was pulled from the council agenda after neighbors opposing TAPS feared that they would be labeled as un-American. 709 supporters thus far have signed Corny's petition to keep this patriotic tradition.
We know someone who's always patriotic, our very own Janice Dean, and she's going to let us know what's happening in the weather.
Oh, we had a killer weekend, Janice. We appreciate it.
Yes, I will take full credit for the nice stuff, and sometimes I take the blame for the bad stuff. So it was a beautiful weekend across the Northeast. We had storms on Saturday morning. That has cleared out. Cooler than average temperatures for the Northeast, the Great Lakes right now, but those temperatures are going to bump up again as we head towards the end of the work week. So 65 right now in New York, 54 in Chicago, 53 in Minneapolis. Really, we've got this upper level trough that's bringing the refreshing temperatures, not as much humidity as we've been experiencing. Past 6 hours, we had that front that has moved through. Still a little bit of a stalled front here across the southeast and Florida. Watching the next storm system move out of the Rockies, and then we also have the potential for severe storms in New Mexico and Texas today, with the potential as well of heavy rainfall. So flash flooding could exist in these areas. We're watching that. Also, heat still extreme across the Southwest, not as widespread as last week, but temperatures well above 100 degrees for a lot of folks in Phoenix. 113 today. The average is around 105. So, you know, I mean, this is what they expect this time of year. Much cooler, relatively speaking, than what we were dealing with last week. Remember, we had those flights that were canceled because of the heat, so they will deal with the summertime heat.
I'm still looking behind you there, 119 in Death Valley.
Yeah,
I think that's what that
they
says.
call it Death Valley for a reason. If you want to stay alive, you probably shouldn't live there.
Don't go there.
All right, Janice, thanks so much.
Have a good one, guys. You too.
5:37 now. The mainstream media having a meltdown over new rules during the White House press briefings.
We represent the American people insofar as we're doing our constitutionally protected jobs of journalism.
Innovations in agriculture.
All right, do the American people even care about this? We're going to have a fair and balanced debate coming up next.
And go back to making movies. That is the message Eric Trump has for Johnny Depp. Carly Shimkus up next with how the first son is fighting back.
And a hack attack. Pro-ISIS propaganda front and center on U.S. government websites.
Yeah, Carly Shimkus with Fox News headlines 24/7 Sirius XM 115. Here with the cryptic message directed at President Trump.
That's right, and scary stuff. You're absolutely right. Government websites in Ohio, New York, and Maryland were hacked yesterday to display pro-ISIS propaganda. Now, a message posted to Ohio Governor John Kasich's website looks like this and says, "You will be held accountable, Trump, you and all your people, for every drop of Muslim blood flowing in Muslim countries." It also ends with the phrase, "I love the Islamic State." Now, the hack mainly affected government sites in Ohio, including the Medicaid Department, the Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, Casino Control, and the Ohio Governor and First Lady's website. It was also displayed on the Brookhaven, Long Island homepage, as well as the website for Howard County, Maryland. Now, the Ohio Department of Administrative Services Chief Communications Officer Tom Hoyt, he released a statement saying, quote, "State of Ohio IT staff are working to restore the computer systems that were impacted today. All affected services have been taken offline, and we are investigating how these hacks were able to deface these websites." He goes on to say, "We're also working with law enforcement to better understand what happened." Now, a pro-ISIS group that goes by the name Team System DZ, they claimed responsibility, and the Ohio Treasurer, Josh Mandel, he says that this should really serve as a big wake-up call to people.
Yeah,
they're out there, and it's scary stuff.
It is. All right, moving on to another topic. Last week we had Johnny Depp, a brilliant move, saying he's going to kill the president, or insinuating it anyway. Eric Trump responding to that and other things,
right. The president's son, Eric Trump, he responded to all the hate coming out of Hollywood. He called it upsetting, but he also says that he lets it roll off his back. Take a listen.
There are no borders for these people. And you see Johnny Depp and what he said. Johnny Depp has his own problems. He has his own problems. Like, how about you go back to making movies and doing your own thing? I mean, this is a man who gave up his life to try and help this country, and he's doing a great job. And honestly, I couldn't be more proud of him.
So all the violent rhetoric coming out of Hollywood has been a pretty big topic of conversation online over the weekend. Carrie on Twitter says, in all my life, I have never seen so much hate spew out of the mouths of actors. Is this the new norm? Shameful and disgraceful. She is apparently an Army mom. Good for her. And then Horizon says it's about time we all put a stop to this nonsense. Roxanne caps things off saying threats have gotten out of control. Hollywood, comedians, etc. It's dangerous and encourages nutcases to act violently.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more there.
That's actually a very good point.
Absolutely.
Take responsibility for your speech.
Yeah.
All right, so a woman that had a Star of David flag was kicked out of the gay pride parade in Chicago?
Yeah, LGBT pride festivities in Chicago. They turned ugly over the weekend because 3 women were asked to leave because their rainbow flags also had the Star of David on them. Now, a march organizer released this statement that you see on the screen. It says the following statement. Yesterday, during the rally, we saw 3 individuals carrying Israeli flags superimposed on rainbow flags. Now, some folks say they are Jewish pride flags, but as a collective, we are very much pro-Palestine. And when we see these flags, we know a lot of folks who are under attack by Israel see a visual of the flag as a threat. So we asked the folks to please leave. We told them people in the space were feeling threatened. So some people online are now accusing these organizers of anti-Semitism. This person says disgusting anti-Semitism, zero excuses, also called it hate speech. And then Andorra says pride parades are only political parades that have been established long time ago. There is no pride ever. What's so more? And then Kevin also says weak. Your people really threatened by a flag. So much for focusing on inclusivity, #hypocrisy. So this happened at a separate event from the main pride parade. Organizers say they are not anti-Semitic, but they support the liberation of Palestine.
So Palestine could participate in the parade and be represented, but not Israel or Jewish people.
Exactly, yeah. So things turned religious and political, and it was, not fun whatsoever.
All right, thanks, Carla.
All right, thanks a lot.
And we'll be right back. Stay with us.
All right, the mainstream media going nuts after the White House announces plans to scale back on televised press briefings.
Represent the American people insofar as we're doing our constitutionally protected jobs of journalism. The White House, of course, and the president were elected by the American people. So I'm not in a tug of war about who's representing whom. But what we are advocating for is the Constitution and the protections that are provided by that.
All right, so the big question is this really about informing Americans, or is it about a lack of national TV exposure for the media? Here to debate, Democratic strategist and former Missouri State Representative Don Calloway, also contributor at The Hill and author of Government Gone Wild, Kristen Tate. Thanks so much, guys, for coming on this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Don, we're going to start with you. I guess Democrats are accusing President Trump of playing favorites with the media and trying to dial back some of the negative tone. But couldn't you kind of argue that President Obama did the same thing, especially with conservative outlets?
No, I think that President Obama and all of his press secretaries pretty much had open access. And of course, these days, one thing that we can all agree on is that politics is the new pop culture. And reporters are certainly part of that. That's probably for the worse. They're the new rock stars right alongside with the elected officials. So there probably is, I can agree, some degree of personal aggrievement here. However, the president and this administration have kind of fueled that, for better or for worse, by limiting access to White House briefings, by holding these closed-door gaggles, and really moving things toward a more favoring various networks that they agree with or don't agree with. So we have, and part of that is because of some of the disarray inside the White House comm shop, and we've seen some shuffling and rearrangements with replacing Sean Spicer, and so we kind of see some disarray there. But I think that the reporters probably have some real complaints here.
Yeah. Kristen, you say that this is about, one of your arguments is that this is about egomaniac reporters upset that they're not on camera every day. But I also think that this is a lot to do with it is that when you don't have television, you don't have a televised press briefing, no cameras are bad for TV. I mean, it's just bad for the network in general.
Well, yeah, sure. But I mean, look, these media reporters say that we need to televise these press conferences for transparency
transparency, but this has arguably been one of the most transparent administrations of recent decades. I mean, Trump can be 100% transparent by speaking directly to the people on social media and through his speeches. This is really about egomaniac reporters just trying to have their silly partisan gotcha questions televised. They are doing everything in their power to try to take down Trump and his administration, and I think this has little to do with transparency and everything to do with reporters wanting to filter Trump's message. I mean, if the mainstream media really wanted transparency and to get information out there, why did they refuse to air Trump's speech to the American people in Iowa last Wednesday? I mean, Fox News was the only network that aired that. MSNBC, CNN, and CNBC didn't, and I think that speaks volumes.
And actually, yeah, Don, I want to go to you on that same thing. I will give you that the president at times has made his life probably harder than it needs to be with some of the tweeting and stuff like that. But I will also say that when I watch CNN, it is appalling how no matter what the story, they do figure out a way to make it seem negative. The headline at the bottom of the screen is always something bad. Can you really blame them for wanting to kind of scale that back a little bit?
Well, every network has media bias, and you know, we've all decided how we want to spin these things in this angle. I would argue with Kristen that the reason that the mainstream media, by the way, Fox News being a part of the mainstream media, didn't cover the Iowa speech is because it was effectively a non-substantive campaign event. What did he go there to talk about? Was he actually campaigning for candidates, or is he just used to going to friendly audiences these days?
They also didn't cover him. I mean, he gave a speech, I think, overseas when he was in the Middle East, and that speech wasn't even covered. That blew me away.
This is all about
the media
politics.
doesn't have an obligation to cover every speech. They've covered him widely throughout this administration, and I think done a pretty good job. The question on the table is, does this administration need to do more to open up access to the media? And we still, by writ large, get our media through television.
Okay. So. Kristen, last word.
This is all about politics, and to those people who are melting down over this, I want to point out that this is nothing new. We have had non-televised press briefings in previous administrations, and previous press secretaries have come out and said not having cameras in the room at times can make the discussions more policy focused. This is nothing new. All the outrage is just to make Trump look bad.
Guys, all right, we do have to go. We are going to run out of time. I do appreciate both you guys coming on this morning. Thanks,
Rob. Thanks,
Heather, over to you.
Yeah. And just to clarify, Fox News did cover that Iowa speech. We carried it live. Well, the former pharmaceutical executive once called the most hated man in America, right there, he is heading to court today. Martin Shkreli facing fraud charges after sparking nationwide outrage for raising the cost of an HIV drug by 5,000%. WNYW's Liz Dahlem is live for us outside the courthouse in New York City with more. Good morning, Liz.
Heather, good morning to you. Martin Shkreli will be here in Brooklyn Federal Court a little bit later on this morning as his trial begins, and jury selection will start today. And legal experts tell us that jury selection could take some time given his notoriety. Shkreli, a 34-year-old former pharmaceutical, hedge fund executive, is now best known for hiking the price of a drug known as Daraprim from $13.50 to $750 a pill. The 34-year-old is headed to court in a separate case for securities fraud. Prosecutors argue Shkreli was running a Ponzi-like scheme, misleading investors in his hedge funds, and then used money from his biopharmaceutical company to pay off the hedge fund debts. He gained a lot of attention after smirking at Congress members during a Capitol Hill hearing and is known to live stream online to answer questions related to his case. We spoke to a trial lawyer who said that he could be a defense attorney's nightmare. Listen.
Being a jerk isn't a crime. They're going to focus on the actual allegations that are a part of this case, which is fraud.